Good evening and Jai Hind. A very warm welcome to everyone present over here. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to today's session on India's national security interest, analyzing the current geopolitical challenges by the Indic Researchers Forum. Indic Researchers Forum is a think tank that aims at delivering quality research on geopolitics, national security, international relation, and its various aspects through civilization perspective. I am Merlin Malhotra, a research associate at the organization, and extremely delighted to be moderating today's session. Today, we have the honor of having Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, VSM, PhD retired, a former MGAOC Central Command. He is the recipient of Vishisht Seva Medal awarded by the President of India and Army Commander's Commendation twice. He has commanded key logistic units of the Indian Army, such as Commandant of a Central Ordnance Depot and Divisional Ordnance Units of an Infantry and Rapid Divisions. He has done active service in operational areas of Jammu and Kashmir and the Northeast. He holds a doctorate in emotional intelligence and is a reputed expert on military logistics and supply chain management. His latest book, Breaking the Chinese Myth, has been the bestseller on Amazon. Not only this, he's a regular invitee as an expert commentator on various national news TV channels. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much, Berlin.
The world is witnessing a paradigm shift in geopolitics with the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, a new cold war between the US China, the takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban, and the global energy and oil crisis that is challenging the existing global order. Many geopolitical pundits have predicted that this decade is going to be the crucial and challenging, especially for India, with the looming threat of a true front war with China and Pakistan. In addition, the fall of Kabul has resulted in instability in the region. The recent developments in Himalayas have forced us to analyze the current challenges India is facing. On this note, sir, I will ask you my first question. How do you read the latest developments in Ladakh, with the reports emerging, such as China is constructing a bridge on their side on Pangong Lake? Do you sense a more offensive China?
Thank you, Merlin. It's a very searching question, and to start the discussion with this kind of background and a narrative is extremely relevant to the current situation in Ladakh. I'm also grateful to Yashas for giving me an opportunity in this wonderful platform of ours to be able to reach across to the young interns and make them understand what exactly we can expect in the year 2022. Much has been said by the experts on various media channels, but today I will wade you through logic, facts, which are based on ground realities. I won't be talking in the air. I won't be speaking like an astrologer or a pundit or anybody like that. I will be speaking and presenting to you the facts and thereafter the implications. It is for you to decide what is going to happen now, because everything would be available to you in the course of the next half an hour or so. What we need to understand is that look at our location. We are geopolitically located against two adversarial neighbors, China and Pakistan. Today, there is a relative state of peace, but transiting to a state of conflict, it can happen overnight. So let's not be complicit. That is one. Let us not start banging our chests, saying that we are supreme. Let us try to understand our own strength and weaknesses, the strength and weaknesses of our adversaries. And what people talk today of a 2.5 front war, ladies and gentlemen, it can easily convert into a one front war. Why I'm saying is there are intelligence reports today which are available, which are suggesting a colossivity between China and Pakistan at the planning level, at the operational level, and at the direction level. So we are looking at the integration of the Pakistan and the Chinese armed forces. So let us not wish away this reality. And now, coming to the question proper, I want to narrate to you in the last 4 months what has been happening from across the border, from Beijing. The first thing is 23rd October 2021. China changes its border laws. And what it brings in, he says the protection and exploitation of our country's land border areas, which will affect the sovereignty and territorial integrity, is sacred and inviolable. And anybody trying to disturb this, he will have to face us. A combat is being talked about. At the same time, another portion of the law covers improvement of the infrastructure and the social development in the border areas. So please try to understand, he has already started this preamble, and his strategy formulation, I will come to the end of this, trying to suggest that what is likely going to be his strategy. The next thing, he, within a month of that, he is already commenced setting up 624 villages along the LAC. So the border laws, setting up of villages, and what he is doing in these villages, he is making habitat there. He is moving his civil population into these villages. And what is the intention? Just keep it at the back of your mind, and this intention will slowly unfurl itself. But the next action of his, he starts renaming 15 places in Arunachal. And he calls Arunachal as the South Tibet. So his intention again, that Arunachal, which is being claimed by India, In times to come, it is no longer a part of India, it is going to be a part of China. The next action of his, as you brought out in your narrative, he is building a bridge on his side of the Pegong Lake. And what is the intention? There is a place known as Khurnak Fort. This Khurnak Fort has been in possession of China since 1958. The vicinity to this is that Pagyangshu Lake, the narrowest portion of the lake, he is constructing the bridge. So now he will have connectivity on the north as well as south of Pagyangshu. So earlier his mobilization used to take about 18 to 20 hours. It will be completed in about less than 3 hours now. So he learned his lesson when we occupied the Kailash ranges, and therefore he is making an attempt to improve his mobility in this area. And last two very minor, we should not take it seriously, because the first four which I have named are pretty serious. The fifth one is hoisting a flag at Galwan and a propaganda video being released. And his sixth act of his is that his local Chinese embassy is issuing a brazen advisory to the Indian legislatures who were celebrating the Dalai Lama. So these six acts of his, if you analyze, are slowly emerging into a strategy. And his strategy, if I will take you back, is related to his three-war theory. And what is his three-war theory? Public opinion warfare, psychological warfare, and legal warfare. So now if you understand that China will always conduct a warfare in these three domains, he is not willing to get into a fight. Take it from me, he will threaten you with these three kinds of warfare, and ultimately, if he will not succeed in this, he will fight you. So, if what I have spoken of my 6 points which the Chinese have made since October last year, if you analyze them into these three headings: public opinion, all these videos are for consumption of his own people, to tell them that we are strong, we are there, the Indians are nowhere. Psychological warfare, as you can see the renaming of the 15 places. What it is it? It's basically a psychological warfare. And legal is the enactment of the border laws, habitat in that area, populating the villages, because tomorrow, if you will go on the negotiation table, he will tell you, what are you talking? This area is ours. 624 villages are ours. People are staying there. They are habitat is there. They're doing grazing and farming in these areas. How can you say this area is yours? So you see this intention. It has got a very larger implication, and this perspective, a lot of people in India are not understanding. And I want you to understand this in slightly greater depth. The next aspect I want to highlight to you all is, please go back to the foreign ministers meeting at Moscow on 10th of September 2020. Jaishankar and Wang Yi. There were five major aspects to the joint statement. The first one was differences should not become disputes. So now you start connecting the dots of his six actions into this joint statement, because he's going to tell you that you have already agreed on this joint statement with us. Please don't make it a dispute. These places where we are there already on the LAC, there is no negotiation on this. The next thing statement is to resolve things through a dialogue and disengagement. He does not talk about de-escalation. He does not talk about status quo, April 2020. No, he's not talking about that at all. He is only saying, wherever you are, please disengage from there. He is not talking of withdrawal also, disescalation also. He is only talking about disengagement. The next is, he says that you should abide by all agreements and protocols in the border areas. So here I want to highlight to you, he has not made any mention of the LAC. He has conveniently converted the term as LAC into border areas. So what are the intentions? His intentions are that he is not talking of the claim line of 1993 as per our border agreement with China. He is going back to 1959 claim line. And if you see his present occupation, he is almost there. Depsang, he is already there as far as the 1959 claim line is there. Pagongshu, he is already there. Gogra and Hot Springs is already there. It's only in Demchok he has not reached there. Rest of the areas, he is at his claim line, so he wants you to accept that claim line. So you understand this scenario which I have actually painted to you, that when we talk of assertiveness, I was talking to a professor of the Shanghai University. He teaches there. He's an Indian. He told me one thing, that the Chinese ideology is based when they consider themselves superior to any other race. He will not accept you as an equal. He wants to be a superior person. He wants you to feel inferior. So always remember that whenever he is taking any action, his action is based on his ideology. And his ideology is this. So you need to understand this, and his assertiveness is leading you to accept what he wants you to accept. He will not accept your point of view. He wants you to fall in line. Thank you.
So my second question is that we are seeing Chinese provocations such as the renaming placing in Arunachal Pradesh and sharing their flag propaganda video in the demilitarized region of the Galwan Valley. So are we looking at a PLA's preparation for a war?
Merlin's a very good question because it brings us straight from what we have discussed in question number one. I want to draw your attention to the latest Chinese mobilization order. This mobilization order is given by Xi Jinping to the Chinese armed forces every year. This year, I want to bring your attention to this order, which talks about capable of fighting and winning wars, a 200 billion US dollars budget for the armed forces, and closely follow evolution of technology, combine the combat training with the combat operations, and lastly, fear neither death or hardship. So you know what is he actually getting at? He is talking of act at any second. He is telling his armed forces, be prepared that when I blow the whistle, or I or the balloon goes up, you should be operational within hours. So that is the message. Now he also states that we will not yield an inch of land. So you see these statements which are emanating from China, and don't think that these are only off the cuff, because now I will give you certain intelligence reports. These are factual reports. First intelligence report which has come is PLA has fully rotated its troops. It means that the troops which were there actually earlier in the border areas or on the LAC have been rotated with fresh troops. So now the implications, we will come to this later. Then he found that he had a weakness in his air force. So what has he done? Opposite the India's borders, he has identified three new airfields. If you remember, everybody talks about our superiority of the air force because Chinese airfields are located at very high altitudes. So what he has done now is he is constructing three new airfields at Tash, Korgan, Tingri, and Dadzang at a very rapid pace. He has upgraded five of his existing airfields. Kashgar, Lhasa, all these places have been upgraded. He has placed air defense and surface to air missiles sites all along the airfields. He has increased his number of fighter jets at all these airfields. And recently he has conducted a trial of his strategic stealth bomber X-20 at Hotan airfield. He has operationalized his combined air defense system in the Western theater. He has integrated the PLA, that is the army, and the PILAF, which is the air force, and at the same time, his army has carried out 100 tactical exercises in 2021. There is also an intelligence report of a multi-dimensional exercise by a combined arms brigade in the Tibet military region. So you see these inputs. Tibetan militia units have also been raised now, and slowly he has also improved his defenses in these areas. And lastly, there is a report which has come in the media that he is using robos with machine guns. You would have actually heard in some of the social media channels that it is being talked about. So you see this at the was on the armed forces front. On the other front, what he's doing is he's trying to generate a world opinion saying that India is the aggressor and we are not doing anything. So he's talking about a suicide bombing attack in Balochistan where a Chinese national has been injured, and he is saying that it was done by RAW. And he is also talking about defiance of India at Doklam, Article 370, and declaration of Aksai Chin as a union territory of India. And also he is talking about how India is joining the Quad to pressurize China. So he is carrying out this kind of a propaganda. Global Times, if you know, is his spokesman or spokes media, which whatever China wants to communicate to the world, the Global Times does it for China. So he is creating, and if I take you back to 1962, he did the same thing in 1962. His strategy he is replicating again, and it is for you to decide now, for the nation to decide now, that what are the intentions of the Chinese. Thank you.
So, my third question is related to my second question. What should be India's counter strategy, or should we adopt a more preemptive approach to counter Chinese aggression?
So it is a very logical method of analyzing a situation that today we have discussed the Chinese narrative, and it should be very, very clear to the Indian government that this narrative is aggressive, this narrative is warlike, and it is to stay on a permanent basis. China is not going to withdraw the narrative, come what may. So, what should we do to counter this narrative? It's important. I will take your attention to the MOD Ministry of Defense summary, which was recently issued. It talks about increase in the force level in the areas where the disengagement has not taken place. So that implies we are going to be there in strength in areas where the Chinese presence is there. Secondly, the summary talks about realignment of our forces, which we have already done. So, what are the options for India now? The first option for India is you have no alternative but to continue to strengthen your armed forces and do the capability building. Your Atmanirbhar Bharat, it has to kick off. It is stagnating right now. I'll just give you a statistic. We have ordered 83 Tejas Mark II aircraft from the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. And do you know the capacity of this HAL is a manufacture of 12 aircrafts in 1 year. So how many years he will take to give you these 83 aircrafts? 7 years. Can we wait for 7 years? Will China wait for 7 years? So we have to improve this. We have to improve our border infrastructure. The budgetary allocations for the border roads have to go up. Then we have to pinch him where it hurts him the most. And that is to strengthen Vietnam, Indonesia, and Philippines in the South China Sea. He must be made vulnerable in the South China Sea. We need to arm these countries, and we have already started with it. You see, the BrahMos missile is already been ordered by Vietnam and Philippines. In Indonesia, we have taken over an island near the Malacca Straits, and we have established our own airbase there. If I remember the name of the place is Sarong Island. Then the next action is that in spite of these LAC tensions, China and India trade is going strong. This year, we have recorded, it is a record, $114.26 billion of trade we did with China. 87.9 billion was the imports we bought from China, and we exported 26.36 billion. What is this happening? On one side, we are fighting him as an enemy. On the other side, we are giving him money to build his own armed forces even stronger. So now is the time for the country to start realizing that the dependence on the Chinese goods, on automobiles, mobiles of phone, on the light manufacturing goods has to end. And for this, the public has to realize it. You have to stop buying these Chinese items because we know that it is almost 20% of the cost of an Indian item, and the quality is also reasonably good. But then we have to take a call for the sake of the nation. So this is what you would have to say for this.
So, my fourth question is related to the India US relations. Some experts argue that India and US are natural allies. However, there is still skepticism about the issues such as the CAATSA Act undermining India's defense sovereignty. So, do you really see US as our ally?
Uh, Merlin, a very pertinent question, and I will not give you a diplomatic answer. I will give you an answer based on a past record of the United States and what are the implications for India. Look what the United States did with Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. And it is a recent memory. He made use of these countries and left them in dire straits to fend for themselves. France, which is a part of NATO, the nuclear submarines were cancelled and given to Australia, much to the annoyance of France. So let us not get carried away with considering United States as an ally. He is with you because he needs you. He is feeling threatened from China. Chinese Navy is becoming stronger by the day. There was a point of time when the US Navy used to dictate the terms. No longer it is the case. So this Quad alliance is primarily to strengthen the US threat to China. And let us not get carried away by the media propaganda. Today, in foreign policy, nothing is permanent. We made the mistake of distancing ourselves from Russia, and we realize the mistake now. We are getting back to Russia now. We are doing trade with them. The strategic partnerships are coming up with Russia. The AK-203 rifle is going to be manufactured with the help of Russians in India. The S-400 missile air defense system is coming to us from Russia. And let me tell you, we initially went to the United States to get their Patriot system, which was denied to us. It was the Russians who came to our aid. So let us not get, and we don't have any treaty or an agreement with United States to suggest that in case China attacks us, United States will come to our aid. We have to fight our own battle. It is going to be a bilateral thing. United States Army is not going to come to Ladakh and fight alongside the Indian Army. It is the Indian Army only who has to fight this battle. So It is good that you see there is so much of investments we are doing in the United States. Our entire military hardware we are getting from them. So they are benefiting. What is the United States buying from us, you tell me? We are only buying from them. So they are looking at India as a growing economy, and they are capitalizing on our vulnerability today because we are facing a threat with the Chinese. So we are running to the Americans to buy military hardware. You can see on the LAC a plethora of American equipment is there deployed against the Chinese. So we have to fight our own battle. And in my opinion, I do not think United States is going to be helping us too much in case of a conflict with China. Thank
Sir,
you.
now for my last question, I will shift the focus to our Western Front, which is equally a volatile region. What is your assessment of the recent developments in Pakistan and Afghanistan? And how do we engage with the Taliban?
See, what is happening in Pakistan is well known to us. Pakistan is breaking apart. The economy of Pakistan is in a bad shape. It's on the FATF grey list and likely to be there for at least 3 more years, if not more. The funding from the United States has stopped. The loans are not coming through. China is extracting its pound of flesh. The CPEC is there. Grandiose plans were there for the CPEC, but CPEC is not going the way it was to go. And within Pakistan, there is a political turmoil also, because Imran Khan is not sure how long he will remain as the prime minister. He is having some problems with the army chief. So all these things are not very conducive for Pakistan. In Afghanistan, Taliban, after it has taken over, it is not listening to the world powers. A non-inclusive government has come about. Liberties of women are being curtailed. Human rights violations are there, and the people are starving. They are not getting any aid from the United States or from the World Bank. There was a time India had invested almost 3 billion US dollars in Afghanistan. The Salma Dam, the parliament building in Kabul, the highways, the water supply system, the power distribution system was all done by India. So we have a close bonding with the people of Afghanistan. And India, in spite of Pakistan not wanting it, we have tried to remain relevant in Afghanistan. We had the third regional security dialogue in which Afghanistan was invited, the Central Asian republics was invited, and China and Pakistan was invited. This happened in Delhi on 10th and 11th of November last year. So everybody attended except China and Pakistan. So you know what does it tell you? It tells you that China and Pakistan do not want any Indian interference in Afghanistan. Secondly, these terrorists from Afghanistan are collecting in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in the training camps there and are being trained by the ISI to induct into Kashmir. So, in times to come, we can see the level of infiltration trying to go up. And whatever attempts India is making on the humanitarian front, if you remember, your 50,000 metric tons of wheat was stopped at the Wagah border by Pakistan, and they wanted it to be transported into Pakistanis' own trucks. A better sense prevailed, and after a bit of delay, it was allowed to pass through. So now this situation, what is developing is Afghanistan is heading towards a civil war. It is not the stability is not there. Pakistan and Afghanistan have already started having differences. The border fencing was not allowed by Afghanistan. Latest reports are there. The Tehreek Pakistan is very active in Pakistan now. The Pakistan Taliban, as they call it. A lot of killings of the army people have taken place in Balochistan. In Waziristan also, a lot of activity against the Pakistan army is going on. So in times to come, we are going to find this entire region heating up, especially Afghanistan. And if Afghanistan is not stable, then how can Pakistan be stable? And in case Pakistan and Afghanistan is not going to be stable, it is going to be a problem for India, and especially in Jammu and Kashmir. So we need to be alert, we need to be vigilant. Our three-tier infiltration grid is working excellently. Our intelligence network is working excellently. In the last 4 to 6 months, you would have seen more than 100 of the terrorists have been eliminated. So this is going to be the situation in the next 1 year. It is not a very conducive and stable environment. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Whatever you have told truly depicts the current geopolitical challenges that India is facing right now and how we should adapt to these challenges. I am hopeful that we will devise a better strategy and response to safeguard our natural security. Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful words.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you very
Jai
much,
Hind.
sir. Thank you very much.
Jai
On
Hind.
behalf of Indic Researchers Forum, we extend our warm regards and immensely grateful for your time and insight. It was indeed a great pleasure to have you today, sir. On this note, let's end today's session. Thank you everyone for joining in us. For regular updates, keep us following on our various social media platforms. We look forward to host many such informative sessions in the future. Thank you and Jai Hind.